No slides.
Yeah?
Okay, I've got any slides.
No. All right, great.
Hello.
Here
I
we
just
are.
told Mark the last people I saw here were Belle and Sebastian, so that's
All
quite
right.
exciting.
All right.
And shows my age.
Oh, it's great to be here. The Barbican.
Yes.
Yeah, exciting. So speaking of exciting, it's been 10 months. 10 months at HuffPost. 10 months we've known each other. And over that time we've gotten along pretty well, considering editorial and commercial.
And it will remain that way if you behave yourself.
Well, I know you well enough to know that you're joking, but for people who don't know you here...
Slightly chilling.
for people who don't know you, a little bit about your background, very interesting background.
So I'm a journalist. I started my career as a reporter at The Guardian. I was a health reporter, education. I went and worked in Westminster as a political correspondent, covering elections. But the interesting thing for me around that time in the late noughties was kind of the move to digital, which The Guardian had kind of trailblazed and really started. But what I found really fascinating about that and what I really wanted to get involved in was how you have impact with digital in the way that you did with print, and how you really kind of cut through and make a difference with your journalism. So after a stint as a news editor, I went and became digital editor at The Guardian and really helped develop some of the kind of storytelling cadences of The Guardian's digital offering, which was really incredibly exciting time. I had that period at the Red Cross as well before I came to HuffPost, and that kind of really taught me about the power of brand, because it's such an ancient, kind of well-known brand trying to modernize. And so that was a really kind of eye-opening experience about brand. At The Guardian, you just take the brand for granted. It is what it is. Mm-hmm. So when I was asked to come do this job, it felt like a really brilliant kind of bringing together of the reporting kind of background, the digital excitement, and then that kind of brand development, I suppose.
Great. I mean, you mentioned brands, the Red Cross, been around since 1870, Guardian, 1820s, something like that, Wikipedia. But, you know, why move to such a new brand, a digital brand like the HuffPost?
I think there were two things that really drew me to HuffPost. The first is the fact that it's a media brand that people love. And I think kind of when they first came to me, I kind of did a lot of those conversations where you go around and you get a sense of what people feel. And people just generally feel really good about HuffPost in a world where lots of people have lost faith in the media and lost trust in the media. So to have a brand that isn't quite tainted by old media, isn't quite tainted by new media, has been around long enough, feels kind of known but not tainted, was like really, really amazing. And the thing that spoke to me about that the most was the digital research that comes out every year from the Reuters Institute in Oxford, which last year, when they asked thousands of people, who did you read in the last week, people recall HuffPost as much as The Guardian and Daily Mail, and second only to the BBC. And we're big, but I know we're not that big. I've seen intimately the data of The Guardian and HuffPost. I know we're not that big, but what it said to me is that people were really proud to be associated with us. They wanted to say they read the HuffPost, even if they weren't really frequent readers. And that's a really special thing. And then the other thing was the kind of talent that's amassing around HuffPost globally. The relatively new editor-in-chief in New York, my boss is Lydia Polgreen, who came from the New York Times, where she led the digital expansion there. And she's really amassed a team of incredible editors around the world. And the thing that she's really pushing us to do, and that I find really exciting, is kind of nurture this brand to be a news brand for the unused. There's so many people who are just turning off news more and more. And things like the Trump election and Brexit show how important it is that there are reliable sources of news to guide people through this. And that feels like a mission we're on, and was really attractive to me. And they're all women as well, which is quite unusual. That was
fantastic.
like, that's a nice environment. Yeah.
Right. Now, given it's only been 10 months, but in this industry, sometimes 10 months feels like a career. Some people do make it a career in 10 months.
The last couple of weeks feel like 10 months with GDPR.
Absolutely. But what are your biggest achievements? What can you say you're most proud of in your time so far with the HuffPost?
So I didn't want to rush in and kind of shake things up and change things massively, because I think it's such a brilliant organisation. What I wanted to do was protect that brand and the feeling around it, and then build a team that can kind of really live up to that brand and fill it full of like really trusted, brilliant journalism that understand its audience. So a lot of what we've been doing is focusing on quality over quantity. On the blogging platform, which is kind of a big part of our heritage, for example, we've really raised the bar on what we're publishing there, much to the PR industry's annoyance to a certain extent, and made that really kind of the best that it can be. And we've been doing a lot of recruiting to support that shift to kind of real quality journalism. I've brought in Jess Brammer from Newsnight, who is our new head of news. Andy Dangerfield's running the distribution team, which is so key to kind of getting our journalism out to the right audience as well as a big audience. And Vicky Frost came from The Guardian to do our life journalism, which is really important to us, because it's the bit that kind of makes HuffPost more than just a news brand, but a place that understands what its readers care about and really kind of nurture that and cater to it. And Vicky was responsible for the editorial part of the membership scheme at The Guardian. So that kind of understanding about really kind of engaging audiences at quite an intimate level and building audience in that way was really exciting.
Great. I mean, you mentioned a few things, GDPR, fake news, social. I mean, what are the other big industry trends that are affecting your work at the moment? All
of those things above, really, and I was so fascinated to listen to Keith Weed earlier, because there was just so many kind of parallels for journalism as well. That issue of trust that everyone is talking about is so critical, and I think we've gone from a period where we were all chasing huge reach, and we all got very good at that, and it was kind of relatively easy to do, but what did it really mean? And the thing that Keith was saying about distributed platforms and how that kind of breaks down your brand and you optimize for different places rather than your brand is so true. And I think it weakened a lot of brands and news brands and their relationship with the audience, because they were chasing that traffic. And I think the big shift in the last couple of years is kind of a recognition that that traffic chasing has had unintended consequences, feeding into the fake news conversation, for example. And to succeed now, I think that news brands have to be the best versions of themselves that they can possibly be. They have to be totally true to their mission. And you can see some really inspiring examples of that. The Times with the paywall, the Times is more true to what the Times is than it's ever been. The Guardian with membership, and other examples like that. We would never go behind a paywall because of that mission to reach people who are unused, and particularly younger audiences. And we have a young and female audience as well, which lots of news brands would kill for. It's a very, important demographic, and it's underserved and underreached at the moment. So I think that real focus means that we'd never go behind a paywall. We need to find other ways to make it work.
So how then does the HuffPost specifically adapt and adjust? I mean, how do you address these issues?
So our strategy has these like three strands. We want to create the best journalism that we can do, which is all about the quality over quantity and getting the best talent to do it. We want to connect that journalism with our audience, and that's about we've just built this distribution team that is really working very hard to make sure that everything we're commissioning has an audience in mind and is reaching that. And coming back to what Keith said as well about how that distributed network is breaking up kind of brands. What we're doing is we are really distributed. We've got 10 key referrers from Facebook to our own platform to Apple to other third-party providers. We're really distributed, and so that's where we get our reach. But how do we make that meaningful? How do we turn those people into loyal app users? Or how do we make sure that they are recognizing us every time we pop up an update, so that wherever they're finding HuffPost journalism in their day-to-day lives, they are really associating it with us and coming back to us and really building that relationship. And then the last part of that, so that's kind of creating the best journalism, connecting it with the audience, is the listen bit, and that's the bit that's most exciting to me at the moment. And it's about listening to the audience and really understanding their needs. And if I can tell like a short story from my time at the Red Cross that really taught me the importance of listening to people. It was in the days after the Grenfell fire when we had responded and we were providing a lot of support to the families. And we set up a fund to take donations to help them. But at the same time, there was this very strong and justified impression that the authorities were letting people down, and they were. It was a disaster after a disaster how those people were let down, so there was a huge swell of mistrust on the ground. And as Director of Communications for the Red Cross, my job was to try and build a communication strategy that would build a relationship with these people so that they would trust us, so we could help them. Otherwise, we had all this money and all this capacity to help people, but no channel to get it to them. And these rumours started spreading on the ground that actually the Red Cross was stealing the donations that were coming in and keeping them. And I looked at all the usual channels I'd use, kind of social, mainstream media, how would I get the message out there? And eventually, we just couldn't turn this story around. And people who needed our help were slamming the doors in our faces because they didn't trust us. Eventually I realised that there was one DJ in West London who was really kind of telling this story, and I spent 2 days chasing her around, trying to win her around. And the next day I finally got to her and she just wasn't having it, and I was like really despairing of this. It felt like we were really letting people down. And then one of my international colleagues at the Red Cross said, "What are you doing? You don't just send people in to help people, you send in community engagement as well. You have to listen to know what help people need, and you have to have a relationship. Like, this is what we're doing, any international emergency from Haiti to Syria, you don't just land there." And that was kind of what was happening in central London, where we thought we knew people. And that kind of really said something to me about the kind of trust gap between the establishment and people. And what I've taken into HuffPost from that experience is this sense that we need to be out of our office, on the ground, and really importantly, we need to get out of London. So at the moment, I'm hiring quite aggressively outside London. We're doing a big expansion in Birmingham, Manchester, and we're encouraging people to move out of London if they want to, because we need to be closer to that audience to grow there. And we've got some really exciting plans for an activation in Birmingham as well to take the newsroom up there for a week.
I mean, it's fascinating to hear from you being at the forefront of the digital experience. I mean, what else is keeping you awake at night now?
Well, running a team of 45 journalists at the moment is like quite stretching and really good fun. The news often keeps me awake at night. Alerts on my phone often keep me awake at night. I'm thinking a lot about the Cairn Cross Review. This is the government panel that I'm sitting on, that's really looking at how we sustain quality journalism for the future, and asking some really big questions about how the ad industry works and how the tech companies have a role in it. And those are really big questions. That feels like a really important piece of work to get right. It feels like a once-in-a-lifetime chance to do something to protect journalism. So that's something I'm thinking about a lot.
Great. It's been fascinating for me to be able to kind of pick your brain on different issues. Okay, great. Well, thanks so much, Polly. Really appreciate your candidness with us, especially at this time in the industry. It's been great. Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.